Welcome to Discovering. Tonight I sit down with Jordan Hoover to talk about his experience on the UP Deer Management Initiative team that was formed to submit recommendations to the NRC to help improve our deer herd here in the UP. And we learn about nesting boxes for tree swallows and bluebirds. So sit back and relax. It's Monday night and it's time for Upper Michigan's very own Discovering.
The secret streams that flow beneath the cliffs of colored stone, forest thick and healthy with birch and pine and oak, surrounded by the greatest lakes this world has ever known. The black bear's awesome presence as he roams the hills and fields, call of the timber wolf, the loon's lonesome trill, the eagle soaring high above, the trout lies deep and still. These are what I treasure, the only way I measure feelings that I have for this fine land. There is so much to discover when you're a long-time lover of northern Michigan.
Years ago, Rick and Nancy Lapp bought a piece of property few would find desirable, and over the years, they transformed it into something beautiful.
When we bought it, it's a gravel pit, and everybody's like, "What are you gonna do?" Well, I don't know, but it turned into something that's a lot of fun.
And it's a sanctuary for all types of songbirds, especially tree swallows and bluebirds. And over the years, the number of birdhouses on their property grew.
47. Just had old lumber laying around and kept making them. When you start looking, we had the room to put them out. Every year I throw out a few more and they get taken,
Tree swallows and bluebirds are cavity nesters.
Nope, they need a cavity. So an old tree, old woodpecker hole, or a nest box.
Now, do they have to be a certain size?
Like the hole, you mean?
Yeah, the holes or the houses.
They recommend 1.5 inches. Yeah. That's supposed to be optimum. 1.5 inches, 5/8. Dimensions, it kind of gives you want about a 5x5, 6x6 nest opening, 6-8 inches down from the hole. Some of them you'll see the face is a little lower, and I'll drill holes up in the top to, so you get a little air and cool it.
This year, their birds started arriving on April 11th to claim their houses.
And the females, they kind of try to find it, and then there'll be a bunch of them, and they'll all fight, and sooner or later one wins, and it's, we call it mobbing. I don't know what the real word is, but...
Is it like the same birds that come back every year, or...?
Probably the same, but same thing. I was reading a paper, and it said that the young, because I always thought that the young ones that were born here would come back, and it says that that's not correct, that the young ones will be miles away around here. They don't come back to the nesting site, but the adults that were here will come back.
I visited after nest building time, and some of the swallows were still mating, and most were putting the finishing touches on their nests and incubating eggs. Tree swallows line their nests with feathers from other bird species, and Rick and Nancy like to help them out with that.
She is looking. They make the nests out of grass and line it with feathers. And if you time it where they need the feathers, it works. White feathers are best.
What kind of feathers are they?
Duck feathers. Pluck them from last duck season.
And the day I visited had so much pollen floating in the air, it made the feathers hard to spot, and it looked like snow. Thankfully, it wasn't.
Yeah, they're wanting those feathers.
I read that tree swallows are very social birds and even like to play with the feathers during the early nesting season.
Come on, you can come out. Come on. Well, let's see. They don't mind us as much as you think. Woo.
These birds are pretty used to the laps and aren't bothered by Rick checking in on them to see how many eggs they laid.
Bluebirds have blue eggs. You know, a lot of them, they put them on a wood pole, but I made them this way so I can take it off and then check it. And I have screws so I can take them off and we'll take a look. One egg, no feathers. So she's one that's taken a few. Typically there'll be 4 to 6. So I usually figure 5 eggs per house. We saw them breeding the other day and I figured she'd be laying eggs. And I clean them and open them up so they stay clean through the winter.
You take all the branches there?
They like a clean nest box. So every spring it's clean for them. See how the front of the hole makes it easier for them to hang on. I do it on the inside and the outside.
Oh, you put those in?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, she's in there.
Oh, she's in there.
She might sit there. And she'll look at you like, what the heck you doing? Can you see her? Oh, it's probably 4 to 6 underneath her. Mm-hmm. And you probably could see there were feathers in there. Those weren't from ones I let go. I don't know where they find those feathers, but they find them.
Mm-hmm. Tree swallows incubate their eggs for 11 to 20 days. The nestling period is 15 to 25 days before the young fledge out. Bluebirds are pretty much identical with a slightly shorter nestling period.
Each house with the pair and the young ones will consume 35,000 insects in the 2 months. And so you take 35,000 times 40. It was over 1,200,000 bugs. Too bad they all aren't mosquitoes, but...
Like robins, tree swallow adult males and females have the same coloration. Bluebird males and females do not. Males are the brighter blue with a rusty colored throat and chest. Females are more of a light rusty brown with tinges of lighter blue.
This is a swallow.
Anybody home?
She flew out and there's, holy smokes.
Yeah.
There's 7 eggs in there.
What is their normal?
4 to 6.
4 to 6?
And I usually figure everyone has 5 because that's pretty much the average. Okay. But 7 is good.
I filmed this a couple weeks ago, so right now all those eggs should be hatched. And in July, the laps become empty nesters again.
Because it's usually right around the 4th of July when all of a sudden they all start coming out and they'll be flying around and feeding, sit on the wire, and then they leave. You don't see them the rest of the summer. You will not. After all that work, and they just leave. You know, you go,
leave you.
Come on.
Empty nesters.
See, that's what it is. See you next year.
After the 2023 deer season that we had, the Natural Resources Commission and the Michigan DNR put together advisory teams in both the UP and the Lower Peninsula to address concerns over white-tailed deer management in the state. Interested candidates applied to be on the Deer Management Initiative groups, and 20 people each for the Lower and Upper Peninsulas were selected by the DNR from the pool of applicants. Jordan Hoover was one of those selected for the DMI.
I've been involved with deer management in Michigan for many years now. Just as largely as an independent. You know, there was a time that I worked a little bit with UP Whitetails Association. I worked with Hunter Nation at one point, but most all of my time I've spent as an independent advocate for white-tailed deer. And when the opportunity became available, I mean, I didn't hesitate.
Jordan said it was a diverse group representing a variety of interests.
And that was one of the things that made this team really unique and a first of its kind, because in the past there's been other advisory teams, and a lot of people forget, but in not so distant memory we had RDAT, or Regional Deer Advisory Team. I think that was back in the late 90s, mid to late 90s. And that group was comprised entirely of stakeholder leaders. So your heads of UP Whitetails Association or Whitetail Unlimited, those kinds of things. But this group, there was a concerted effort made to look at a broader spectrum of input. And for the first time that any of us are aware of, at least, the commission and the department created seats at the table for independent and unaffiliated people. I think we actually ended up with like 22. We had a couple of guys from the department that we had actually voted to allow to participate and vote with our team. We had Mark Zitnick, who represented law enforcement division for the department, and then we had Bill Scullin as well. And from that point, it was a pretty aggressive schedule. We had 3 months worth of virtual meetings, and a lot of that was really educational stuff, because we've got people from all different backgrounds and all different levels of knowledge at the table. I mean, you got people who, like Bill Scullin, for example, he is a biologist. And then you've got someone else that's like, well, I just love deer and I like deer hunting and I care about the future of the herd. But, you start talking all these numbers. And so to bridge that gap, the department had constructed a curriculum, if you will, of education on a wide array of topics. Everything from hardwoods regeneration to predator-prey studies to all sorts of different factors that would influence deer abundance in the Upper Peninsula. Everything you can imagine. It was quite comprehensive, really. And we would have usually meetings 2 days a week. We'd have 2 speakers that would run about an hour and a half apiece, and we'd have some Q&A time thereafter, which unfortunately was often very, very short. It was pretty compressed. A lot of great information. At times, I'm a bit of a deer nerd and a data junkie, so I just eat that stuff for breakfast. But for other people, I felt like there were certain speakers that, maybe they could have done a better job of making it more palatable for the average person. But on the whole, they did pretty good, and it was good getting all that knowledge, getting everybody up to speed on the same page, all looking at the same information, and it set the table for what came later with the in-person meetings. So after that 3-month period of educational sessions came to an end, then we had 2 days where we met in person in Marquette, and that was where the metal hit the meat and the decisions were made, and what a whirlwind that 2 days was.
The group was tasked with making both regulatory and non-regulatory recommendations.
We broke everything into basically 2 categories. We had regulatory and non-regulatory categories to work with. Okay. So an example of something that would be non-regulatory would be habitat improvement. Let's say thermal cover regeneration, something like that. That was something that was talked about a lot, was the need to improve habitat across the UP, whether it was nutritionally, whether it was thermal covers, just a wide range of shortfalls were addressed with habitat. So that was a non-regulatory example. And then we'd have something that was regulatory, like, for example, the reinstatement of the archery doe tag on the combo license. That would be a regulatory issue. The first day, we spent a lot of time delving into all the nuts and bolts of non-regulatory. Get all the ideas out, get them all on the boards. We had poster boards all over the walls. There was probably 200 different ideas that were put on the poster boards, and of course you narrow that all down to 8 or 10. That was pretty difficult to do. It really was, because there was a lot of valuable information. There was good ideas. There was good perspective that was shared. And unfortunately, just due to the time constraints that we had to work with, a lot of those ideas just didn't make the second day. I think that there was virtually unanimous agreement on every vote that we had pertaining to the non-regulatory issues. Day 2 moved even faster than day 1. and day 2 was regulatory. In the UP, we're somewhat limited with the regulatory tools that we have. We can't get too carried away with harvest quotas and things of that nature up here for all the obvious reasons. But that was a more contentious discussion, obviously, because everybody has very strong feelings about what directions we should go. And again, we were up against the clock, and the whole feeling was 4th and goal with 5 seconds left. It was difficult because there was a lot of detail that had to be discussed, and there wasn't necessarily enough time, in my opinion, and many others, to adequately do that. I don't think anybody got entirely what they wanted. In a way, that's a positive, though, right? That tells you that there was a lot of compromise, there was a lot of give and take. It was suggested that we look hard at reducing black bear numbers. There was a number of mechanisms discussed as to how to do that. The possibility of a spring season was brought up. The possibility of increasing tag issuance or reducing the number of points it takes to draw certain season tags. A very comprehensive discussion was had about predators in general. Obviously, here in the Upper Peninsula, we have an entire suite of apex predators, and it's certainly a concern. The wolves were a contentious point of discussion for some time throughout the process, and ultimately that simply is what it is, legally speaking. As long as they're on the ESL and the state doesn't have the management authority, it's to some extent a dead issue. But we did discuss it. We did ask that the department maintain an up-to-date wolf management plan so that when that time comes, we're ready to go. We discussed the return of the year-round coyote season. That was another bullet point under predator control. Earlier this spring, the commission, of course, voted to reduce the coyote season, and there were a lot of folks that were really not happy about that, especially up here in the UP. Moving on from predators, we talked about the possibility of a 1 buck tag system, but that ultimately fell through. It didn't get enough support, which I kind of found surprising.
I'm very surprised at that one.
Yeah, I talked to a lot of people that were really supportive of the idea. Sportsmen's clubs across the UP, other DMI members, but it just didn't make it to the final vote. We talked a lot too about the need for antlerless harvest, because there's been, at least in the Superior watershed, a 9-year moratorium on antlerless harvest, save crop damage tags, DMAP tags. And a lot of us felt that that's creating a significant biological cascade of issues. A healthy buck-to-doe ratio is a basic tenet of herd health anywhere in the country, whether you're in Montana, New Mexico, or the Upper Peninsula. And we have a regulatory mechanism that we used for more than 50 years to do that, which was the archery doe tag option on the combo license. So that was a recommendation from the group, was to return that as well. There was some discussion around the possibility of an expiring archery doe tag, say November 14th. If you didn't punch your archery doe tag by then you don't get one. And the ideology there was to protect, especially our superior watershed does. So shutting that off was an attempt to protect disproportionately vulnerable migrating deer. So I don't know ultimately how that will land with the commission, but that was in there as well.
Jordan submitted the team's final report of recommendations to the DNR on May 24th. A full report of these recommendations is now online on the DNR's website, and I posted a link to that on my YouTube version of this show. The NRC's next monthly meeting is this Thursday, June 13th at 9:30 a.m. in Lansing. The meeting will feature the outcomes of the Deer Management Initiative, and hunters are encouraged to attend, but it is in Lansing, which is a bit of a drive for us up here.
I think they're going to have their final vote in July. Not a minute too soon, of course, because the regs are coming out in August and the book's got to go out. But ultimately, it's the commission that decides. And we're certainly all saying our prayers and crossing our fingers that the commission makes some wise decisions, because our herd definitely needs change.
A big thank you to Jordan and the rest of the DMI team for their efforts over the last few months. Jordan and I talked for over an hour and a half about his experience on the Deer Management Initiative team and the entire process. Obviously, I did not have time to fit that all into tonight's show, so you can find the full interview on my website, discovertheup.com, and my YouTube channel. That's all for tonight, and I hope to see you right back here next week for Upper Michigan's very own Discovering.